For those of you who just got my email, was there an issue with the link that was sent out from the registration? So like Chris and Laura?
I didn't even try the first link. It was like 12:01 and I just went to my inbox and grabbed the first thing I saw. So I don't know.
All right. Well, that works.
That's what happened with us. This is Shayna. That's what happened to us the last time we registered for the 401k meeting, but couldn't get into it because of that link. It wouldn't allow us. And then we just emailed you for this link because, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, sorry about that. Let's see. All right. Well, in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and get started. Nice to meet all of you. This is going to be recorded, but don't let that stop you from asking any questions if you have any. Chances are, if you have a question, somebody else probably has the same question. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Brie LaSalle. Hopefully I've met all of you during your client finance trainings or somebody from your practice. But I administer the 401k for the Mid-Atlantic, Georgia and Mid-Atlantic, Georgia, Gulf Coast markets where you are, soon to be the Tennessee, which is a different plan. But we, alongside the service team that I will introduce throughout the presentation. So again, stop any of us at any time. If you have any questions, we are happy to answer them. So the goal of today's presentation is to introduce any care centers that went live with Privia Medical Group in 2021 to the retirement plan. I'll go over what it means to be a part of an affiliated services group, the upcoming education for care center administrators and participants. And then if you currently sponsor a 401k for your practice, what your options are at this point in time. So again, this is really geared towards care centers that went live in 2021. I understand that there are a couple of physicians that are on here that went live later than 2021, which is totally fine. And you have an extra year before you have to participate. So this is really information as to whether or not you want to move forward and start participating earlier than required. Okay, so every single care center that partners with Privia Medical Group is part of an affiliated services group. That is a designation that the IRS has given Privia. And so under the affiliated service group rules, this is only 401k related, but it was intended so that so that employers cannot set up multiple corporations or business structures to escape coverage and non-discrimination testing of qualified retirement plans. Again, this is only for retirement plan purposes. Medical, dental, vision, those are optional as far as participating if you want to. But in order to be compliant with the affiliated service group rules, every single care center that went live at any time during 2021 has to start participating and contributing to the Privia plan starting January 1st of 2023. Does anybody have any questions about what this means? And this is everybody who's employed by your care center. So even though nobody is considered an employee of Privia Medical Group, every single care center is performing services under the affiliated service group umbrella, if you will, and therefore everybody has to participate. So does anybody have any questions about the affiliated service group rules? Okay. The plan is cross-tested for compliance. So the plan was designed to allow physician owners to maximize their contributions to the plan based on their compensation. The IRS sets limits each year as far as what the maximum limit is for contributions. 2023's contributions, they went up quite a bit compared to 2022. Elective deferrals for those who are under the age of 50 is $22,500. If you are over 50, you can do an additional $7,500, so a total of $30,000. And again, that's elective contributions from your compensation. And then a safe harbor and a profit sharing contribution. Those two combined with your deferrals equal $66,000. That's the maximum that you would be able to put away. However, in order for physician owners to put away that maximum $66,000, they have to make a contribution to your non-highly compensated employees. So that safe harbor contribution, that is something that everybody, physicians and non-highly compensated employees alike, receive, and that amount does not change. It is always 3% of gross compensation, and that's up to $330,000 as far as compensation goes. And then there's a profit sharing contribution that must be made to your non-highly compensated employees' accounts as well, in addition to that 3% safe harbor contribution. And for 2023, that is 1.4% of their gross compensation. So that total 4.4% of gross compensation is 1/3 of what the highly compensated or physician owners would be able to put away in their accounts. And that is what allows the plan to pass the testing, so long as, you know, all of your non-highly compensated employees receive that at minimum. And then your highly compensated employees, hang on, Rick is sending me a text message. He's having issues with he's having technical issues. And that distracted me, sorry. So safe harbor contributions, that goes to everybody. Profit sharing is required for your non-highly compensated employees, but it can, and it's optional for your highly compensated employees. So does anybody have any questions about how the plan is tested and audited, and what physicians can receive versus what your employees have to receive? No? Okay. So the plan design and specifications of the plan are that employees who work at least 1,000 hours in a 12-month period, and this equates to working at least 20 hours a week, yes. Is there a question? Okay. Employees who work at least 20 hours a week or more and are at least 21 years of age are eligible immediately upon hire to make deferrals into the plan. So that's money that they would have withheld from their paycheck, and then the care center administrator would remit their deferral amounts to empower each pay period. The two employer contributions, the safe harbor and the profit sharing contributions, those require 90 days of service and start with the first paycheck of the month following the 90 days. So if you were to hire, if you had somebody who started today, they would reach their 90 days in March, in March, and then you would start the contributions April, that first paycheck in April for your employee. We always use the original date of hire with the practice. So if you have an established practice, you've been in business for 10 years, then, and you have employees who have been with you all of those 10 years, then on that census file, you'll want to put their original date of hire with the practice. It has nothing to do with your go live date with Privia. We always use everybody's original date of hire with the practice for eligibility and vesting purposes. Does anybody have questions about eligibility or anything else that I've covered so far? All right. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, there are required contributions that employees must receive so long as they are eligible. The safe harbor non-elective is always 3% of gross compensation. That's 100% vested immediately. And we really recommend that the care center makes those contributions on a per pay period basis. You don't have to, but it is recommended that you make those contributions on a per pay period basis. The additional non-elective contribution, which is characterized as profit sharing, is 1.4% for 2023. And that fluctuates year to year based on what the IRS limits are. I've seen it as high as 1.45%, and I think I've seen it as low as 1.35%. So it really kind of averages around 1.4%. And again, that's just based on what the IRS limits are for each year. If your practice wants to make an additional contribution above the minimum required, so you can't make any changes to the safe harbor contribution, that stays at 3%. Where you can make a change only in the positive amount is to make a contribution above and beyond that 1.4% of profit sharing contribution for your non-highly compensated employees. But as long as you're making the minimum contribution, then the plan is passing the testing and is not at risk. So you can go above that if you want to, you don't have to. Participant contributions, so that's your elective deferrals. Those are always 100% vested immediately. The maximum limit for 23 is $22,500 if you are under 50, and you can do that additional $7,500 catch up if you turn 50 or any of your employees turn 50 at any point in 2023. The profit sharing is on a 6-year graded vesting schedule. So that means that they're 0% vested until they hit 2 full years of service with the practice. And then they're 20% vested after that second full year of service. Each additional year up to year 6 is an additional 20%. So after 6 years of service, they are 100% vested in that profit sharing contribution. Employer contributions are calculated on compensation up to $330,000, and that's an IRS limit for 23. So that means if you have physician owners who earn $500,000, the safe harbor and the profit sharing contributions for them can only be calculated on that first $330,000. So the maximum safe harbor that a physician can receive is $9,900, and the maximum profit sharing that a physician or any highly compensated employee can receive is $33,500. Or Kyle, is it 33.5 or 33.6? I have it written down.
33.6.
33.6. Okay. So that's 10.18% of gross compensation. Our plan does allow for in-service distributions for employees or participants who reach age 59 and a half. And then our plan does also allow for loans. Does anybody have any questions about vesting or employer contributions? All right, I will carry on. So there are no fees that trickle down to the care centers. All fees are paid by the plan's assets. Participant investment and transaction fees, that's how the administrative fees are paid. So participant, hang on. Saw a question about profit sharing. Let me get to chat.
Yeah, can you explain that a little further? I don't know if I'm grasping that part. Profit sharing meaning what? Is that equal to the MSSP bonus pay? I don't understand that part. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so it's characterized as profit sharing for retirement plan purposes. And Kyle, you might be able to touch a little bit more on that. But in order for the plan to pass testing, there are minimum contributions that have to be made to participant accounts, and retirement plans characterize it as profit sharing. So it's really just, it's a contribution based on their gross compensation.
And just to add to that with your question about, if it's based on bonus payments or anything like that, although it's titled profit sharing, it actually doesn't have anything to do with, sharing in the company's profits, so to speak. This is an additional benefit that's provided to the owners and rank and file of each of the care center. So these contributions are required actually regardless of whether or not you show a profit for the year. These contributions that Bree is referencing, these are just the minimum requirements that have to be contributed on everyone's behalf. And because these amounts are contributed, it allows the owners or anyone who the owners should choose to allow to receive some increased contributions in the profit sharing source of approximately that 10.18% of comp.
Does that answer your question, Dr. Castillo?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I haven't introduced him yet, but Kyle Hogan works for Prime Pensions. They are our third-party administrator and everything compliance related. I will introduce him in a few slides, but that's who I go to for everything compliance related. So thank you, Kyle. All right, so participants will pay any investment expense fees based on what their investment choices are. There's a participant distribution fee of $25 per request. If a participant requests a loan from the plan, then there is a loan setup fee and then also a loan maintenance fee for the life of the loan that, is collected from the participant's accounts. And then a periodic payment setup fee. That is for anybody who reaches age 59 and a half and would like to take periodic payments from their account. So if they wanted to do it on a monthly basis, then the setup fee is $25, and then again an annual $25 fee for the maintenance. The plan does allow for self-directed brokerage accounts. It's through Empower's platform, so if you elect into that, then it opens up more investment options than what we offer. But Rick Nelson from Merrill Lynch will talk about that in a few slides. I've already sent out the data request to everyone, so if you haven't gotten it, please let me know. It came from benefits@priviahealth.com. I need a signed participation agreement and a W-9 from the practice. It's not something that goes to all of your staff to sign. They've got different documents that they need to complete. Both of those need to have your care center's original or legacy EIN, not the Privia EIN that's used for Athena. The census data, that template, every single column on that spreadsheet is required information for your staff and physicians. You don't need to include anybody who does not work, 1,000 hours in a 12-month period. If you know they'll never reach 1,000 hours, then they don't need to be included at this point. I will preface that Secure 2.0, or the Secure Act, they are looking at long-term part-time employees being required to participate, but that will be announced whenever that is actually signed into law. So just giving you a heads up. You don't need to include your, part-time employees at this point. If you do not provide a phone number or an email address for your employees, it is going to be a little bit more difficult for them to register their accounts, because that is what Empower will use for their authentication, the second form of authentication. They'll send a code to either the email or the cell phone based on what the employee elects when they register. So please make sure all columns are filled out. The care center point of contact information. So this is going to be the person who is responsible for remitting the contributions to Empower on the participant's behalf. I strongly recommend that it is 2 people, maybe the physician owner and then a payroll administrator or office manager, somebody who can take over in the instance that somebody else is out. It does take 5 to 7 business days for those credentials to be established and Empower. So if it gets to a point where somebody is no longer with the practice, then there's always a backup for somebody to remit the contributions. I also need the payroll frequency for the practice, first 3 check dates of 2023, and whether or not it's biweekly, semi-monthly, monthly, whatever it is. And if you have multiple in your practice, please let us know. And we would also need to know who's on which frequency, because loan repayments are affected by the frequency. We do know that physicians are on a semi-monthly frequency through Privia Medical Group. And then if you do currently sponsor a 401k for your practice, and it allows for loans, then we would need a list of participants that have loans. The reason why the legal name and current plan document would be needed is if you are interested in merging your legacy plan with the Privia plan, and we'll get into that in a couple of slides. But everything that has an asterisk by it, you should be able to pull from either your payroll company, or if you have a legacy retirement plan, you should be able to pull all of that data from your legacy plan. Does anybody have any, and all of this information, and it's due back by the 16th of December if you haven't already sent it to me. So again, the service team that I work very closely with and wouldn't be able to do it without them. All of their contact information is listed here. Rick Nelson, he is from Merrill Lynch. He's our plan consultant and investment advisor. Lee Sherman, she's our senior client services manager at Empower. So that is the record keeper for the plan, and where everybody will log in to see their accounts and everybody will be able to change their investment elections. But she is the point of contact for you as a plan sponsor, or a care center administrator. She is not the point of contact for participants. There is a dedicated participant services line that employees will be able to call, but please do not farm out her information to staff. And then David Lyons, he's our relationship manager at Empower. Just kind of make sure that, everything is going the way that it should be. But Lee is going to be our point of contact there. And then our third party administrator, as I mentioned, is Prime Pensions, and Kyle Hogan's the manager there. I work very closely with him on anything compliance related. And so at this point, I will turn it over to Rick so that he can go over his role and a little bit about the investments for the plan.
Great. Thank you, Bree. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody, for taking a few minutes to learn about the Privia Retirement Plan. As Bree said, my name is Rick Nelson. I'm with Merrill Lynch, and I have been providing financial leadership for the last 37 years. I joke that I started when I was 6 years old. It doesn't feel like I'm that old myself, but apparently that's the case. We have two roles, myself and my team have two roles with the Privia Retirement Plan. Our first role is to be a consultant for Privia as the plan sponsor. So we help with plan design concepts. We help put the provider team together, the service provider team together. We help with investment menu selection and design and maintenance and monitoring, things along those lines. The second role that we have is to provide education for the plan participants, so all the folks in your care centers. And so in that regard, we're available to do education meetings. There are several education meetings that have already been scheduled for folks that are transitioning to the retirement plan this year. If your care center needs a separate education meeting for some reason, we are happy to do that. For large care centers, we can come out and see you and do those meetings in person. For care centers that either don't have the space for a meeting like that or prefer to do virtual, we can do virtual meetings as well. Your call. Bree has asked me to talk a little bit about the investment options that are available in the Privia Retirement Plan. Usually when we start to talk about investments, that's when people's eyes tend to glaze over, and I understand that. You're really good at what you do. But the investment side of managing a 401k might not be your bailiwick. So there are two ways that you can somewhat set it and forget it. On the investment side, you may be already familiar with target date funds from a previous 401k. A target date fund is a fund that is made up of a bunch of sub-funds within one individual fund. And it is designed to have a higher rate of return the farther out you are from retirement, and to have less volatility as you get closer to your retirement date. So as an example, if you're thinking about retiring perhaps in 10 years, you might select the target date 2030 fund, which is approximately 10 years out. It's 8 years out right now to your retirement, but it's the closest to your 10-year number. And in that fund today, you might expect a higher rate of return. And as your retirement date gets closer and closer, that fund will be managed in such a way that the volatility will decrease and the corresponding return will also reduce a little bit as well. But that's to provide a predictable amount of money when you get to your retirement date. So those are the target dates. That's one way you can more or less set it and forget it, not have to go out and build your own portfolio. The second way in the Privy Retirement Plan that you can put things on somewhat of an autopilot is through the use of the custom models. You'll see those on the bottom right of the screen, the asset allocation models. There are 5 models, and they vary in risk from conservative, moderate, moderately aggressive, and aggressive. If you do not make an affirmative investment choice in the Privy Retirement Plan, the default option is the custom model, moderate risk. Okay? The reason for that is we don't want somebody to make investments, forget or neglect to make an investment selection and then have their money sitting there not doing anything for a number of years, right? So ERISA allows for a qualified default option. There's certain criteria for a qualified default option. The moderate custom models meet those criteria, and so therefore that's where your participant who does not make an affirmative selection of an investment will default into. So you may have somebody come to you a year from now or at some point in time from now and say, hey, I just got into my account and I looked everything up and I was surprised to find about 15 different mutual funds. I didn't select any of those funds. How did that happen? Well, now you'll know, right? So that happened because they did not make a selection. So the qualified default option was put in place in their account, and that's the moderate risk custom model. So that's the second way a participant can put things on autopilot to some degree. Let me pause there. I said a whole pile of things. Let me just pause there and see if there's any questions on anything I've covered to this point. Okay. So there are 2 other ways that a participant can invest in their money in the Privy Retirement Plan. You'll see on the screen there is a menu of different investment options that is very diversified. It's got most of the asset classes. It's got all the core asset classes that a participant might be interested in investing in, from large cap growth, small cap funds, fixed income funds, a stable value fund for security of principal. So a participant can go in and select one or more of those funds and build out a portfolio for themselves if they're comfortable in doing that. If they have any questions in what investments to make, we are available. Myself and my team are available. No additional cost to the participant. We're more than happy to provide them guidance along those lines. My number was up on the screen and will be in the information that Bree passes along to you. It's usually easiest to send us an email, schedule a time for us to have a consultation, and we're more than happy to do that. The fourth way a person can invest in the Privy Retirement Plan is something that Bree mentioned earlier. That's a self-directed brokerage option through Empower. So this option maintains connectivity to the Privy Retirement Plan, but would allow somebody to invest in an account which essentially would look very much like a discount brokerage option. So if somebody wanted to go out and buy Apple stock and a gold ETF or something along those lines, they could do that in the self-directed brokerage account. We don't recommend that for most people because most people do not have the background to go out and do that. But if you have a participant who has the sophistication and the desire to do that, that is available to you in the Privia retirement plan. We're trying to be as flexible as possible to serve the needs of a very broad group of participants in the retirement plan. So let me pause again there and just see if there's any other questions along those lines that I've covered.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can we use our old brokerage account for the investment? I use Mass Mutual, and I have a guided brokerage account who guides everything for me and invests for me. Can I still use those people?
So the answer is kind of sort of. You cannot have them necessarily have access directly, but if you wanted to have them still guide you in their compliance and they were comfortable doing that, they could do that. So what you would do is provide them with the menu or whatever your investment selections are, and you could ask them for their advice and counsel, and solicit their help in that regard. You could not set up a guided contractual program within the Empower self-directed brokerage to meet exactly what you might be doing at Mass Mutual.
And that puts me at a big disadvantage because, how do we pick the right stocks and all that stuff? And the performance of what I'm getting from my current is unbelievable. They're one of the top rated in the country. So I'm basically going from top rated to somebody who's going to be questionable for me. At least that's how I feel.
Sure. So, Doctor, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you and try and figure out the best way to serve, what you're trying to accomplish. So if you wouldn't mind, just shoot me an email after this presentation, and we'll figure out a time that's mutually convenient and see how we can best help you.
Okay. I don't know if you've heard of them, but Castaigne Companies, who takes care of me right now.
I'm not familiar, but that doesn't surprise me. I'd be more than happy to, like I said, try and figure out a way that we can accommodate what you're trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. So we've talked about Empower a number of times. So let me just introduce Empower. Most people, when we are in person, we ask for a show of hands who's familiar with the brand Empower. Most people are not familiar with Empower. They're doing more and more advertising these days, so I think that more and more people will become familiar with Empower. But they are actually the second largest record keeper of retirement plans in the United States. They do 25 of the 50 state retirement plans. They do large companies that you can think of. Your phone might be a product of one of the large companies that they do the retirement plan for. And they do plans for small businesses down the street from you, probably. So Empower is the culmination of bringing J.P. Morgan's, Putnam's, and Great West Financial's retirement plan businesses together about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago now. They have since acquired several other record-keeping firms as consolidation in the industry continues. But the reason that Privia is using Empower is their size affords them the ability to provide you with really good technology. It also allows, there are not many record keepers that could silo each one of the care centers in such a way that when you log on, you only see your care center. You don't see everything across Privia. There are not many record keepers in the business that can handle that kind of a plan. And so I think that you'll be very pleased with the Empower as the record keeper and the technology behind what you're looking at on a regular basis. So with that, unless there's any other questions, I'll turn it back over to Bree.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome.
All right. So as mentioned previously, there are some additional education webinars that are scheduled. They start next week and they go into the first week of January. Education and setup for Care Center payroll contribution remittance. That's the phase 2 webinar where Lee will be facilitating that, walking everybody through how to remit contributions. She's going to go into, what the options are for remitting contributions in a few slides, just a brief overview. But I need you all to start educating your employees now. There were actually some documents in the email that I sent out on November 28th that have to be provided to them. So the safe harbor notice, summary plan description, if you haven't already sent those to your employees, please do that as soon as possible. And then also the phase 3 webinars, which Rick and his team will be facilitating. Those are employee education webinars. So please forward those dates and times that were in the initial registration email to your employees. I don't have any of the information for your staff yet, so please let them know that there are employee education webinars coming up, and most of them are either during lunch hours or after hours, which woohoo, everybody wants to spend their lunch or after hours learning about the 401k, but they are very beneficial. And then the information that I've requested from each of the care centers needs to be back to me by December 16th in order to get the entire care centers or all of the care centers set up in their own divisions in Empower with user ID and access set for anybody who's going to be remitting contributions. So the Plan Services Center, that is where anybody who's remitting contributions for the care centers will have access. This link here, and everybody should have this presentation. I meant to mention that previously. It was part of the email that went out back at the end of November with everything else. But that link is how you will log into Empower's Plan Services Center to remit contributions. It's separate from what your employees will log into. It's a different one, but that's how you'll log into the site. There is dedicated plan support, website support that can be reached via the 877 number. And if you have any questions about how to remit contributions, as I mentioned, Lee is going to be your main point of contact. I'm able to help to an extent, but she's going to be your main point of contact for all transactions. So payroll contributions, distributions, participant enrollments, all of that information she's going to be able to help you best. User IDs will be created and sent via email. They're going to come from security@retirementpartner.com in 2 separate emails. So one with your user ID and one with your password. Also in that email is the plan number. So everybody is joining the Privia retirement plan. And that's how you will want to, if you ever have to call Lee, there's a couple of automated prompts first, and you're part of the Privia retirement plan. And then there's a plan ID that is requested as well. So that's helpful. If you call saying that you're from XYZ Care Center, they'll eventually narrow it down to the Privia plan. But if you always start and let your participants know to always start that they are part of the Privia plan. It'll be easier for them to be located. And as Rick mentioned, access is restricted by care center. So there's a few of us in the corporate office that have access to everything in Empower. I think I'm the only one that uses that access, but I'm able to help get things done if Lee is unavailable. You'll log in and you'll see the entire plan's assets and the number of participants. So you'll see that there's over $300 million in assets in the plan and 6,000 participants, but you'll only ever be able to narrow it down to your employees. You'll never see anybody else's information. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lee, and she's going to go over participant enrollment post census file. So once you send the census file to us and I send it to Empower, then these are your options for participant enrollment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bree. As mentioned, my name is Lee Sherman. I will be your contact here at Empower. I will be able to help you with all things regarding the website. And as Bree had mentioned, after your census has been uploaded to our system, that creates like shell accounts for each employee. You should be giving these employees the paycheck contribution form along with the beneficiary designation form. You can send the paycheck contribution form back to Empower either by faxing it or by uploading it through our website. And then we'll go ahead and get that information into our system. It is important to always send the beneficiary forms to us so that we can update their accounts. But you would also use the paycheck contribution form to update your own payroll system with their deduction amount so that the correct amount is taken from their paycheck. Some care centers, although not all, may use what's called a payroll bridge. And that payroll bridge is through a payroll vendor, someone like ADP or Paylocity. And that eliminates the need for a payroll contribution form because the payroll vendor will just send us the employees, we call it census data, so social, name, address, date of hire, date of birth, and then that will set up the shell account. From there, the participants can go online and choose their deferral rate. They can choose their investment allocations. And then what we'll do, is feed that information back to the payroll vendor through what's called a deferral feedback file so that the correct amount is taken out of the employee's paycheck. Also on our website, you'll be submitting contributions. And there's a couple of different ways to submit the contributions. For the smaller care centers that have less than 30 employees, we kind of recommend just submitting the contributions manually, which is not a hard process. You would just log on to the website, click on enter payroll, and then you'll see a list of your employees, and you would just manually enter in the contribution amounts and submit it. Some care centers prefer to upload a file. It's simple as well, but the beginning stages, we would have to map our system in order to read your file. Again, not hard, just a little bit different than the manual entry. And then for those care centers that do use a payroll vendor like Paylocity, that's where the payroll bridge comes in. And that's when Paylocity or the payroll vendor will send us the contribution details automatically. and we'll get that situated. There, with the payroll bridge, there is still steps that the care center administrator would have to take once we receive the contribution information from the payroll vendor. We will send the care center administrator an email to let them know that there are pending contributions on the website, and then they would then go onto our website and fund those, just kind of approve everything, and then they would get applied at the close of business that day. I do want to mention that with payroll vendors that use our payroll bridge or 360 feedback file services, there could be an extra charge with the payroll vendor in order to facilitate that. Does anyone have any questions about enrollment or submitting contributions? I know this was just kind of high level for now, so if you think of any questions you have after the call, certainly let Bree or I know. Thank you. Thanks,
Lee. And if you have any interest at all in getting either a file set up or a 360 feed set up, then I would start that process now, because it's not an immediate process. It's not something that can be turned on overnight. There's testing that has to go back and forth between Empower and either your payroll or the file upload. So if that's something that you want to explore, I would send Lee an email now, and she'll be able to work with you and determine whether or not your payroll provider is eligible to do what needs to, either do the feed or the file upload.
PDI. Yeah, thank you so much for mentioning that, Bree. There is definitely a process, not difficult, just it takes a little while.
Right. All right. So I will now let Kyle go over what your options are if you have a legacy retirement plan, or you currently sponsor a retirement plan.
Thanks, Bree. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll go over really quickly the options that you have for what we refer to as your legacy retirement plan. So if you currently sponsor a retirement plan, if your care center currently sponsors a retirement plan, that's what this is in reference to. And keep in mind that was there a question? Okay. Keep in mind that this is only in reference to 401k plans. So if you have traditional defined benefit plan, cash balance plan, any type of retirement plan other than a 401k plan, please reach out to Bree or myself separately, as there are some additional action items that may or may not be required for those plans. So the first option that you have available for you, or the first option that's available to you, is to keep that legacy retirement plan open, but in what we refer to as a frozen state. So effective 12/31/2022, no additional contributions would be made to that plan, except for any contributions that your current provider may reach out to you in 2023 and notify you of as true-up contributions. So any missed contributions, any required contributions in order to satisfy 2022 funding, those contributions can be made in 2023. However, all new deferral withholdings as of January 1, 2023 must be made to the Privia retirement plan with Empower. Keeping your plan frozen, you would need to continue to work with your current provider to make sure that the all annual processes are still completed. So everything that you're doing now, you would need to continue to do on an annual basis with regards to filing 5500s, making sure that the plan document stays updated and in compliance with the IRS 3-year cycles. All that good stuff would continue to be required, and you would continue to maintain your fiduciary liability over the assets of that retirement plan. The second option that you have available to you would be to merge your legacy retirement plan into the Privia retirement plan. Under this scenario, it is an all or nothing scenario. You can't just choose to have a few participant balances move over and the rest remain in the legacy retirement plan trust. All assets move or no assets move. Under this scenario, we would need to perform what we refer to as a protected benefits review. That's one of the reasons why Bree had requested a copy of your current adoption agreement, SPD, and any amendments. Because if a merger were to take place, there are certain provisions that the IRS says, these benefits need to be protected. So if you had certain provisions in your plan with regards to early retirement age, vesting, certain distribution options, those are things that would need to be protected and provided to participants after those assets merged into the Privy Retirement Plan. If you're thinking that you might want to merge, but you're not entirely sure yet if that's the route you want to go, I still encourage you to submit a copy of those documents so that we can at least get the protected benefits review out of the way, so that if you choose to move forward in the future, it's just one step in the process that's already completed. One final item to mention about the merger process, and Bree, Empower, myself will remind you of this multiple times. But if you choose to merge, the final $5,500 for your legacy retirement plan does still need to be filed after the merger takes place, and that is something that your current retirement plan administrator needs to take care of. It's not something that Prime Pensions or anyone else on this team are able to do for you. And just really quickly, one item that I overlooked mentioning in the very beginning of this is that for those of you who have a legacy retirement plan, these really are your only two options. It is too late in the game to terminate that retirement plan and allow participants to take a distribution of their benefit. Now that you're a member of an affiliated service group, you no longer have the option to terminate that retirement plan. Does anybody have any questions on that? I know that was a bit of information. All right, thanks, Bree.
Thank you. And one thing, if it gets to a point where you do want to merge, let us know before, or I want to say let us know before you let your current record keeper know. But there have been instances in the past where they take that as the plan is terminating. So if they give you anything to sign, an amendment to sign that says that the plan is terminating, then, pump the brakes. Anything that says, plan termination is really, you want to back away from that. It's essentially a service termination and an asset merger. So, we've gotten into issues where that has to be reversed. So anything that says plan termination that they ask you to sign, just don't sign it. Contact me or Kyle, and we'll be able to point you in the right direction. All right, so next steps. As I mentioned, everything was already sent to the majority of you on the call. I just sent it to the care centers that went live in 2022 and want to start participating earlier than 2024. So go ahead. You should have that in your inbox now. It's from benefits@priviahealth.com. Get all of that information back to us or back to me by Wednesday the 16th, Wednesday the 14th. If you can't get that back to me by then, let me know. But it does take 3 to 5 business days for the census file to be loaded, and then 5 to 7 business days for credentials to be established in Empower. So there is a little bit of wiggle room, but because we're working with 60 different care centers that have to start participating in 2023, I'd prefer to get them over to Lee and her team to start processing as soon as possible. If you have any questions about any of the information, it really should be everybody, with the exception of your part-time employees who don't work 20 hours a week. So physicians and staff should both be on the census file. I got a couple of questions throughout the presentation. The safe harbor and the profit sharing, those go to your employees regardless of their deferrals. So that is a contribution that the care center must make to the employees' accounts regardless of their deferral amounts. This is not a matching plan. I know a lot of 401k plans have a match where what the employer contributes is dependent on the participant making deferrals. That is not the case with our plan. It is not a match. Those are required contributions that need to go to participant accounts. Lee is going to walk through the Plan Services Center, and all of the participant forms are there for you. I'm going to follow up again with another email. I've just been waiting on getting the deferral form or the paycheck contribution form. Those terms I use interchangeably, but I'm just waiting on it being updated for the 2023 limits since the IRS raised them for this year or for next year. So here's some terminology and FAQs that I typically get. Pre-tax or the plan allows for both pre-tax and Roth contribution deferrals. So your employees could elect to do pre-tax or Roth deferrals, or they can do a combination of both. Physicians who are paid by Privia Medical Group, they can elect to do one or both. But that maximum is $22,500 between the two. So you can't do $22,500 in pre-tax and $22,500 in Roth. The maximum is $22,500. Deferrals, and I cannot stress this enough, must be remitted to Empower as soon as administratively possible. These are deferrals that your employees are trusting that you are withholding from their paychecks and then remitting to their accounts in Empower so that it can be invested in the way that they have elected. No more than 3 business days after the check date. Our plan is large. As we mentioned before, there's 6,600 participants. So our plan is audited each year, and deferrals or, payroll remittances are looked at by our auditor. If they are remitted more than 3 business days after, there's a lost earnings that should be calculated and made to those participant accounts. As I mentioned, again, the employer contributions, we strongly recommend that you make them on a per pay period basis. There's no allocation condition for the plan. So what that means is that no matter when somebody terminates, if they were eligible at any point in 2023, then the practice is responsible for making the contributions from January 1st to, March, whenever it is that they terminate from the practice. And then but you have until June 30th of the following year. So in early 2024, Kyle will send out an email to all of you asking for the year-end data for 2023, everybody's gross compensation for the year, what their deferrals were, and then he compares it to what was remitted to Empower throughout the year, and then if there's any differences. And the differences that there are must be remitted to their accounts by June 30th of the following year. So you'll have until June 30th of 2024 to make sure that you're all trued up for 2023. If you decide to make the safe harbor and the profit sharing contributions on a less frequent than payroll basis, so if you want to do it on a monthly basis, quarterly, annual, whatever it is that you choose, just make sure that you are consistent with it so that your employees are aware that, okay, I'm going to get it once a year. I'm going to get that safe harbor 3% once a year after the year closes. So just make sure that you communicate that to them. And then highly compensated employees. Profit sharing is optional for highly compensated employees, but as we mentioned, it can be that 10.1818% of gross comp. there are a lot of people that can be considered highly compensated employees in a practice. It's going to be any owner or partner of at least or greater than 5% stake, any employed spouses, children, parents, grandparents of any of the owners, and then employees or physicians who earned over $150,000 in 2022. So in order to be considered a highly compensated employee for 2023 based solely on compensation and not your ownership stake, then it's $150,000. You would have had to have earned $150,000 in 2022. We always look at the previous year compensation to determine who's highly comped for the upcoming year.
I have a question on that. And what is so for the non-highly compensated employees, is there a salary cap? Like, how do I determine, is it everybody who makes less than 50,000 or is it everybody who makes less than 150? How does that?
Yeah, it'll be anybody who earned under $150,000 in 2022.
Okay.
Unless you're an owner with 5%, greater than 5% stake in the practice. Or an employed family member of a partner or owner.
No, I'm talking about just our regular staff.
Yep. So regular staff, if they earned $149,999 last year, they're considered a non-highly compensated employee.
So 150 is still the number.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. And we are 10 minutes over. I appreciate those of you who stuck around. Are there any other questions before I let you all go? No? Well, thanks so much for your time during your lunch period. I really do appreciate it. And let any of us know if you have any questions. If it's not my responsibility, I'll push you off to the person that it is, and we'll be able to work it out.
Thanks, Bree.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.
Bye.